Hi everyone, welcome back to Be Rich. I'm also out of town currently, and Sashwath is in Chennai, but he's not at the studio. So for a change, we have switched places. Today, what do we have, Shashwat? What do we have to talk about today?
Today we have India's ban on rice exports and Ukraine's rice exports issue or grain
Hmm.
exports issue, which is also going on simultaneously, driving up global wheat and rice prices.
Hmm.
So wheat has risen by 12% across the board, and rice has also been under severe inflation, be it your Thai rice or Indian rice,
Correct.
whichever exporting country you look at. There's been a severe inflation in all of these countries, and not just in their export prices, but also in domestic prices. There has been an uptick in the food inflation, which is caused by these grains. So, at least in
True.
India, the reason amounts to water damaged crops and poor harvest season. But on the global scale, it's paired with a negative shock, supply shock, in terms of Russia backing out of their grain deal. So what they've decided to do now is attack all Ukrainian exporting ships
Hmm.
in the
And
Black
storage
Sea
also.
and storage silos. So
Yes.
they've basically resorted to what what NATO and all other Western countries call it barbarian tactics, and yeah, they've
Hmm.
sort of pulled back on their agreement. So that's
Yes.
exactly what has been going on,
Correct.
and it's quite a sad state to see a war descend into um, a situation where you see inflation. Okay, inflation is bad in and of itself, but you see that people are dying. People on these merchant ships are dying. People who are exporting, and really, people, civilians who have nothing to do with this entire war are getting slaughtered pretty much. And this is a really sad state of affairs. And India also capping off they've increased, put up tariffs of about 20% on normal rice. Your basmati rice,
Correct.
they haven't done anything to, but normal rice, they have definitely put a tariff on
Unprocessed rice. Yeah.
unprocessed rice. So it's quite a sad sight because and it's not your Western countries which are going to be hit the most, but it's rather your countries in the African subcontinent
True.
who's going to suffer a lot because they end up relying on imports for their grain and fertilizer. So it's definitely a sad sight to see.
Very true. And this doesn't bode well for terms of our global inflation and our rate cycles, which has been played out. So global economy just seemed to like kind of stabilized out of this pandemic. Then it was hit with the war in Ukraine. Then it was hit with this inflation problem. And all the central banks, the big economies, central banks all raised rates, except Japan, and they've tried to tame the inflation. Finally, UK also from 8%, being very persistent, has finally started to show signs that it's abating. But now with all this latest efforts from Russia and India, what the funny thing about India is there is really no necessity for India to do this. We are sitting on a huge stockpile. The government stockpile is quite well. We have quite a substantial amount of rice right now in the country. And the reasons why the prices in rice are fluctuating the way do internally in the country, it's not because of not enough rice being available in the market. There seems to be something else happening. But it's a knee-jerk reaction from the government, is what most observers are feeling. Not only observers from outside India, even Indian think tanks and Indian people within India feel that there's a knee-jerk reaction from the government, that there's no necessity to put this ban into place and to put these extra tariffs into place, that we're in a good position. But I guess government is being cautious, considering the fact the way the monsoon is being this year, that it's lopsided in certain areas of the country where most of our agriculture is. The green belt is there's not been enough rain, and places where usually it doesn't matter if it rains or not, places like Delhi seems to be having severe weather. So
Yes.
government is trying to be cautious, I guess, and play safe than take a chance on something being a problem later on. Because historically, India has always been suffering, and no one comes to India's aid when India is suffering. Historically, that's been the case.
Yeah.
Whenever help is required, India is required to chip in and help in, especially like when United Nations peacekeeping forces required. Indian Army being a well-trained large army, we always chip in. But when in turn we need something, the rest of the world seems to be a little slow in reacting for our requirements. So I
Yes.
guess that sentiment does play out a little bit into this. Of course, there are lots of other conspiracy theories behind it that right at the time when Russia decided to get out of the Green Deal and bomb those silos in Ukraine and push the inflation and the global food supply into a tailspin, doing it right at the time, optically speaking, it doesn't look very good. But I don't think it's based on any of that. I think it's purely based on being cautious.
Yes, and I mean, and moreover, there also is a provision which they've said, which is that we do get a special request from a certain government that we need to meet our food security, then we'll definitely export it to you at the market price rather than give you a tariff on of 20% on it. So I definitely
Correct.
think that rather than completely critiquing the government for being overtly cautious, I'd say a more nuanced approach to this would be welcome. But that being said, it still doesn't really bode well for the rest of the world when one of your biggest rice exporters are basically saying, "Hands up! I'm going to place tariffs on it. Each man for himself." And basically, this isn't my problem, type of a thing. And it's definitely doesn't. It's not great for countries who are already one having depreciated currencies because of
True.
rising interest rates in the US. So that
True.
because most countries do trade on dollar. So what ends up
True.
happening now is that with your added tariffs and with your so India isn't facing the dollar pressure as much because we're doing an underhanded trade with the devil sort of by
True.
doing striking a deal with Russia and exporting oil. But if we weren't
True.
doing this, we'd also be facing a huge depreciation force on our currency because of the US interest rates. So
True.
and other EU interest rates and UK interest rates. So what is ended up happening now is that India has basically found itself on a nice platform where their currency isn't for once depreciating as much, or that it isn't facing that much of a depreciation force. And all these other smaller countries with a depreciating currency who have to trade with India on the US dollar are now not being able to do that because one, their currency is depreciating faster than the rupee is, and
True.
secondly, their import costs are rising. So you're pretty much squeezing these countries by the neck, which is quite sad because these same countries are the ones who are unable to afford basic food security for themselves. And
Very
I
true.
wonder how large this, yes, for humanitarian reasons, we've said that if you need to meet food security, we'll export it to you at price. But I wonder how far this deal stretches and whether the terms of this deal truly allow for food securities in these countries. So I'm quite skeptical about that because we'll have to see how this pans out because it's not a 1 day thing or a 2 day thing which we're talking about.
True. And this begs to the question as an investor, how does all this apply to you? One of our critics who's always in our channel critiquing us, Mr. Manu John, yesterday also was very vocal in his full caps. He was screaming in top of his lungs. What's the point of these conversations? These long videos where you guys are just rambling on and on. How does it help us? So the point of this whole thing as an investor is just notice these nuanced patterns which are happening globally because we're talking about this channel especially talks about us being a global investor. We're not only talking about India centric investing in this channel. We're talking about if you're being, looking at investing options globally. During the last 10, 20 odd years back, there was a lot of cooperation globally. There was a lot of network globally. There was a global trade going on. Things were very transparent, and we were going through a very liberal democratic phase, the world. And it looked like we were reaching a new Ethiopia where everybody gets along with everybody. And there's kind of a rule of law applying. And these organizations as UN, World Health Organization, the IMF, all seem to have be very powerful organizations because all the countries cooperated through these channels, like the World Trade Organization. But now what's happened in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years since the pandemic and post-pandemic, things are broken down. These global corporations and this world trade isn't as transparent and as fluid as it used to be. Now people seem to be relying more on one-to-one. Countries seem to be working on a more bilateral trade. India seems to be busy working on a country-to-country basis, on a relationship basis. That's why our prime minister is working even in EU. You see this. India is approaching EU not as a zone, but each country on its own, like France separately, Germany separately, bilaterally tying up for trade, bilaterally tying up for securities. Here in the Middle East, instead of approaching Middle East as a region, India is now approaching each country as a separate unit. Saudi Arabia as a separate unit. UAE recently as a separate unit. So this is the way it seems to be going right now. So as an investor, you should be very much aware of these change in weather, the change in dynamics globally. So if you're looking as to invest as an Indian, that too if you're a resident Indian, you have to be cautious on how you move your funds and which countries you leave these funds, and you have to keep an eye on these things very closely. Because last
And
thing you want to do is government policies can change very rapidly and very soon. You don't want to be
yes,
holding the short straw and your money is stuck, or you have to liquidate all your assets in a rush and discount all of it because you have no option but to get your money out because the situations between India and that country have changed. What do you say, Shashwat?
and if you want to know why we're talking about the topics we're talking about and why we're keeping a pulse with taking the pulse of the global economy and the global political economy, it's because I'd refer you to this book, The Alchemy of Finance by George Soros. And if you open it in the first part one chapter, I don't know if it'll be flipped on camera, but part one theory, the first three chapters completely cover macroeconomics. So if you do not keep a pulse on the economy, if you do not keep a pulse on the political economy, and if you look at part two, which is historical perspective, you'll end up seeing that you have topics like the international debt problem, the collective system of lending, Reagan's imperial circle, evolution of the banking system, oligopolization of America. And then if you go into the real time experiment, you'll see George Soros going through starting point August 1985 all the way to conclusion of 1986. You'll end up seeing that if you do not keep a track of the global economy, you have no room to be an investor. So these are the topics which you have to keep looking at. You have to keep going through FT. And if you don't have a subscription to the Financial Times, you definitely have to go through Business Standard. Business Standard is a great newspaper to look at. You can look at the Mint, many other newspapers which talk about the same topics. You don't have to have an FT subscription in order to be able to talk about what we're talking about. And yeah, so I hope this clears things up on why we select these topics as well.
Okay. And let me give you an example now. Let's say right before the Ukraine war started, when Russia was talking about the war, Russia kept saying, "We're not going to invade. We're not going to do anything." And the world said yes. But some people said, no, it doesn't sound right. Troops started building up at the border. Even then, a small segment of society said, oh my God, oh my God. But majority of the world kept saying, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. Then it got closer and closer. And the Ukrainians themselves started panicking, saying, he's going to do it, he's going to do it. But most people in the world said, no, Putin's not crazy. He's a smart guy. He's a smart man. He's not going to do it. He's a statesman. He's doing politics here. He's trying to do a mind game. All kinds of theories came out. And suddenly it happened. And
Yeah,
it happened very fast. And the world started reacting. People did not know how NATO would react, how the European Union would react. The reactions were very slow, but they kept ratcheting it up. Finally, all the European companies had to pull out of Russia. They had to shut their businesses down and pull out of Russia, which for some of the European companies, Russia is a very big market, and it
definitely.
really hit their bottom line hard. And even though some didn't leave, they decided to still keep their operations, keep it in
To
the
a
Russian
minimum.
name, do it in the Russian way. The Russian government has grabbed all of it, taken possession and nationalized it. So if you look at it like that as an investor, you're invested in a company like that, your stock holdings, your shareholdings will go through crazy ups and roller coaster. And you do not know some of these companies have a future without Russia being in a dominant part of their market share anymore. So these are things to keep an eye on. And it all happened within a matter of 3 months, 4 months. So if you were, let's say, being bullish and saying, no, Putin will not do it, I'm not going to liquidate my assets and sit on it. Now you'll probably be like counting huge losses in it because you had no choice but to pull it out.
Yes.
So this is just an example of what can happen very fast. And if you don't keep an eye on what's going on, how the world is working. So it is time to be cautious. If you are going to invest, even just blindly investing in American companies, being an Indian citizen, if you're an American citizen, sure, you can do whatever you want because it's your country. But if you're an Indian citizen, sitting and investing in American markets to our legally allowed routes, those doors can close very fast for some reason, any
Yes.
reason can, for an unnecessary argument or some tension, doors can close very rapidly and you'll be left holding the short straw. So this is one of the main reasons why we say keep an eye on these things, think about it, always, like Shashwat says, read the newspaper. You don't have to believe whatever the news says verbatim. Yes, a lot of it is propaganda, but you should be able to filter the propaganda and see the nuances of where it is. And I'd rather always be cautious than be suffering a huge loss because of my own pride or my ego. That's the
Yeah.
point of this or point of any of our conversations me and Shashwat have been having for the last few episodes, especially on this channel. Why we talk about Financial Times articles, because they're well researched and they seem to be unbiased, most of them. And if we do feel they are biased, we call them out on this channel. Like the Blackstone article, where we felt it was like a
Yeah.
PR stunt going on. We called it out for what it was. We didn't see anything in it. Anything else you
And
want to add, Shashwat?
the
Yeah.
Paul Krugman piece on New York Times also was something where both of us went back and forth on. So we definitely have room for nuanced opinions here. And if you guys want to see more of this, please do leave comments saying so.
Yeah, and I hope Manu is satisfied with our rambling on this today. If he's not, I'm sure he would turn his caps
Let us
lock on
know. Yeah.
and let it rip on the feedback down below. But the funny thing is, he seems to always be very negative about this, and it's very heartening that even someone who's so negative about us and our channel still
Wants to
subscribes to us
know.
and follows all our videos and
Yeah.
takes the time to let us know how he hates our channel. So it's good. I love it. I like
Yeah.
I like any criticism,
Yeah.
even really bad criticism on our channel is good for us. It helps us grow and helps us to acknowledge all our audience. We hold no grudge to anybody or anyone.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for watching Be Rich today. I hope you enjoyed the video as always. And please do think about subscribing to our channel and turning on the bell notification icons so you'll be notified anytime we come up with a new video. That being said, thank you again for joining us today on Be Rich.
I am in Tokyo on work on the 5th of August 2023. I have a lot of following in Japan, Tokyo. Those who want to meet me in Tokyo on 5th August, kindly drop me an email on the address given below or contact us on WhatsApp there. My team would get in touch with you and facilitate the meeting. Once again, I thank you for your support for Be Rich. It's a great privilege and honor that so many of you in thousands have subscribed to my channel and have supported me. I have written 2 books in English, The Alchemy of Money and Ordinary Stocks, Extraordinary Profits. These books are published by us and are ready. If you want to procure a copy, send us a message to the WhatsApp number given below and my team would respond to you. If you want an Amazon Kindle copy, you can click the link below. Finally, those who wish to consult with me can send a mail to berichenglish@gmail.com. Once again, I thank you for your support. If you like this video, press the subscribe button of my channel, hit the like button and turn on the bell notification.